Hi, everyone. We're excited you're here and thank you for joining us during Lab Compliance Connect 2023. Welcome to today's presentation on instrument qualification for a quality management system by Justin Haugen. Before we kick off, please feel free to engage with us and ask questions at any point during the presentation in the Ask a Question box for our Thermo Fisher team to address. Without further ado, please welcome Justin.
Hey, thanks, Bill. My name is Justin Haugen, and I'm representing the Thermo Fisher Scientific Life Sciences Division. I'm a Field Service Engineer 3 at Thermo Fisher Scientific in the U.S. West Districts. I'm responsible for the installation and validation of next-gen sequencing, as well as qPCR instrumentation. My career started at Novartis, where I was responsible for protein purification in a protein crystallography lab. Then I joined GE Healthcare as a Field Service Engineer, servicing the purification systems. In 2011, I joined Thermo Fisher Scientific, where I became a senior level service engineer, managing customer accounts in San Diego County. I was asked to be a part of this webinar because a lot of my work involves performing qualifications on a variety of Thermo Fisher platforms. Let's quickly review the learning objectives of this webinar. We will learn where a qualification comes from, what process validation is and how qualifications fit, what a Thermo Fisher Scientific qualification provides, how they are organized, IQ, OQ, and PQ, and when qualifications are performed. Finally, why qualifications are important. Qualifications are an industry standard. What does that mean? It means that leaders of industry, in our case, this would be biotechnology instrumentation, have come together and agreed to use this mechanism as a response to regulations and standards to document performance. Now, qualifications are not just the domain of biotechnology instrumentation. It has been accepted in a multitude of business segments ranging from aerospace, food processing, and silicone chip manufacturing. Even package shipping adopted the qualification. An example is Amazon. When they build out a local warehouse, they install what is called a conveyance system to move orders from fulfillment to logistics for delivery. They perform a qualification of the conveyance system and computer system validation of the software and computers that employees use to process your orders. Our Thermo Fisher Scientific qualification documents that the instrument is installed, operating, and performing to the manufacturer's design specifications. It is performed by a trained and certified service engineer, such as myself, and you'll receive a document as well as supporting attachments. As we have mentioned, qualifications are an industry standard accepted in response to regulations. What would be an example of such regulations? Directly applicable to Thermo Fisher Scientific customer and our instrumentation is quality system requirements of productions and process controls and process validation. If we dig deep into 820.70G, it defines the essentials of what equipment performance needs to be documented. We have highlighted the pertinent language that guidance interprets for the industry. Again, it's not calling out the IQ, OQ, PQ mechanism, but rather what needs to be documented. Subsections for maintenance, inspection, adjustment of equipment are specific to each manufacturer's recommendation and design. For one, the maintenance schedule. Each manufacturer shall establish and maintain schedules and records for the adjustment, cleaning, and other maintenance of the equipment to ensure that manufacturing specifications are met. Maintenance activities include the date and individuals performing the maintenance activities shall be documented. For two, inspection. Each manufacturer shall conduct periodic inspections and records in accordance with established procedures to ensure adherence to applicable equipment maintenance and schedules. The inspections include the date and individuals conducting the inspections should be documented. For three, adjustment. Each manufacturer shall ensure and inherent limitations or allowable tolerances and records are visibly posted on or near the equipment. When a new laboratory equipment or instrumentation is installed into a workflow, an IQ, OQ, PQ should be performed. The qualification of equipment instrumentation and associated software is an integral part of the process validation. Here is a specific code of federal regulation sections for process validation. This code of federal regulation and the complementary ISO standards applicable for medical devices 13485 require that validation of a process, particularly manufacturing, shall be performed. We have highlighted some of the important language that guidance documents help interpret. Subsection A calls out the process validation that needs to be done. For example, where results cannot be fully verified. Subsection B calls out details of who, what, how, and when of a process validation. Qualified individuals shall be documented in stated requirements with a process to review and evaluate, revalidate where appropriate. For perspective to better understand subsection B, we have provided the FDA quality systems definition of establish. Establish means define, document, and implement. The objective of validation is to produce that documented evidence provide a high degree of confidence or assurance that all parts and scope will consistently function according to specification when called into use. So what does process validation look like? Here is a high-level overview. There can be a lot of steps detailed, but here we have a few broken out into major milestones. Any validation starts with the development of a plan. For our purposes, this would move into the qualification of hardware and instrumentation. Data is collected and organized into validation reports, and if the plan inputs are met, the workflow is in specification and can be released. The objective of qualification is to produce documented evidence that an instrument is in a workflow is performing within the manufacturer's design specification. Again, we want to emphasize the documentation process here. Now that we've established the industry standard origin of the qualification from within regulations and standard for process validation, we can move into what a qualification is. As most of you will be familiar, there are three components to a qualification: installation, operational, and performance. Notice an additional box below PQ on the slide. Here is where Thermo Fisher Scientific Life Sciences Group differentiates RUO and the IVD DX instrument products. The PQ is performed with the DX or IVD instruments, and the IPV or instrument performance verification is performed with the RUO instruments. To be clear, for our audience, this is strictly Thermo Fisher Scientific's nomenclature to differentiate our instrumentation. For our purposes, they are equivalent. All three components make a completed qualification protocol. We will be speaking in more detail of each of the qualification components as well as the difference between hardware PQ and workflow PQ. Moving on to the details. The first component of the qualification is installation. By definition, the installation qualification will establish confidence that process equipment and ancillary systems are installed to the manufacturer's recommendations. Additional supporting details about installation instruction and test procedures can be found in section 820.170 installation. What does Thermo Scientific interpret this to mean for the instrument IQ? It means we will verify and document instrument or equipment against order invoices, any specific site requirements, any configuration details of the instrument or equipment, and specific install criteria. It should be noted that IQ or installation qualification is not repeated once the instrument or equipment is successfully installed. Follow-up qualifications would be called OQ-PQ. Component 2 of the qualification is operational. By definition, the operational qualification will establish confidence that process equipment and ancillary systems are capable of consistently operating within the manufacturer's established limits of specification and tolerances. Additional supporting detail can be found in 820.72 inspection, measuring and test equipment, 820.80 acceptance activities, and subpart N 820.200 servicing. Thermo Fisher Scientific breaks down the operational section into effective subsystems of our instrument and equipment. Some examples of subsystem testing are the internal self-test diagnostics, thermal testing, lamp or laser alignments, and optical calibrations. Final component of a qualification is performance qualification or instrument performance verification. Remember, Thermo Scientific uses PQ for its DX or IVD instruments and IPV for its RUO instruments. By definition, the performance qualification or instrument performance verification will establish confidence that process, equipment, and ancillary systems are performing to the manufacturer's recommendations by demonstration with objective results. Now, this might be a bit confusing. The most common understanding of a PQ or performance qualification is the established limits and specifications for the entire workflow or process, including equipment, instruments, and software. In the case of Thermo Fisher Scientific, the instrument hardware qualification, the PQ component, is focused on the workflow of our instrument hardware, not as the larger workflow or process PQ that the instrument is being used in. Our hardware PQ establishes the utility of the instrument and the standard independently from its suitability for the use of the total process workflow. Thus, the Thermo Fisher Scientific instrument hardware qualification becomes a supporting element in the larger process validation. Unfortunately, Thermo Fisher cannot perform the process validation for you. Some examples of hardware PQ or IPV standards Thermo Fisher Scientific uses in its instrumentation are an RNase P plate for quantitative PCR instruments, sequencing and gene scan standards for CE or capillary electrophoresis instruments, and control beads or other synthetic controls in our NGS or next-gen sequencing products. Now that we know what a qualification is, we can ask, when are qualifications required? Qualifications are recommended upon installation or relocation, after any significant repair, post-completion of planned maintenance, after any configuration changes such as software revisions or hardware upgrades, and if the laboratory use changes as moving away from research into sample processing or research into a clinical environment. Thermo Fisher Scientific uses a risk-based approach in alignment with FDA philosophy to make recommendations to customers after any critical or significant repairs. Let me provide an example. If a field service engineer replaces a door or hinge and has nothing to do with the instrument operation or the way it generates data, then we would not recommend a revalidation. However, if we replace a halogen lamp that would affect fluorescence or the light path and would impact the data, we would recommend a requalification. Why are qualifications important? Qualifications are important documented evidence as performance over time. As we have established in a previous slide, qualifications are a periodic and ongoing necessity. Qualifications support quality management systems, process validation, mitigate risk to results or sample integrity, and provide evidence of suitability for the intended use. Here are some myths. Myth 1, validation of a process, equipment, or instruments is only done once. In fact, no, revalidation is required for process changes. Reference 21 CFR 820.70B3. Changes to equipment or instrument or specification changes would trigger a revalidation. Revalidation should be performed if performance or equipment or instruments documented in the qualification show any deviation or negative trends. Also, revalidation should be performed if there are process failures or CAPA-related activities. Another myth is validation is only necessary for processes where subsequent verification is impossible. That's not true. Validation should be considered even if your process includes 100% verification. 100% verification is not necessarily 100% effective in a process. In myth 3, validations are burdensome. Yes, validations can be burdensome and costly, but planning is key to mitigation at this point. Validation is also an investment in the process, equipment, instrumentation, and personnel. It helps you understand the controls necessary to reduce variability. Reducing variability reduces the risks to results and reduces operational costs. A well-planned process validation improves customer satisfaction and confidence. Myth 4. My field service report or planned maintenance report is sufficient to document performance. That's not true. To understand why a service report or maintenance protocol cannot stand in for a qualification is because the intent of the document. This is how a potential investigator will establish the utility of documentation being performed by a firm. The intent of service report is to document the scope of the service event being performed. A maintenance protocol intention is to document the manufacturer's recommended maintenance activities to be performed. Only a qualification is the industry-accepted mechanism to document performance as called out in the guidance documentation from the International Medical Device Regulators Forum and FDA Medical Device Quality Systems. Requirements we spoke about earlier in the webinar. The next two slides are a comparison of Thermo Fisher Scientific services and associated details. Please take note of the differences here. Only the qualification has the intent to document performance of the instrument and provide documentation in a formal signed protocol. In this second comparison slide, please take note of the differences such as documentation length, required time to complete, training, and certification. The qualification has significantly different delivery and requirement. Where are qualifications applicable? Here is our attempt to align some of the applicable standards and regulations to the customer segments that should consider process validation and qualification services. For Thermo Fisher Scientific, as a manufacturer, we will be looking at Part 820 and ISO 9001/13485. For some of you in this audience, your interests may align with the CLIA, CAP, and ISO 15189. But understand, these are only some of the more globally accepted markets for qualification. There will be many local, regional, or international government entities which will also support the use of a qualification to document performance of equipment. We recommend using the guidance documents from Global Harmonization Task Force, International Medical Device Regulators Forum, and the US FDA as reference starting points. Because science can't wait on non-compliance, I would like to circle back on the webinar learning objectives. We have summarized where qualification comes from and the origin of the qualification as an industry standard. We have explained process validation and how a qualification fits. We've discussed what Thermo Fisher Scientific provides in its IQ, OQ, and PQs, and when they are required. We have reviewed why qualifications are important to validation. We have also compared some details about the different Thermo Fisher Scientific instrument services. Thermo Fisher Scientific is very proud of our mission. Providing compliance and qualification services is one of the many ways we support you as our customer. Your laboratory process and quality systems to make the world a healthier, cleaner, and safer place. For more information about Thermo Fisher Scientific qualifications of instrumentation, equipment, or other compliance-related products, we urge you to reach out and contact us. You can visit our webpage or email us for additional details, or call us to have a conversation with one of our specialists. We will be happy to address any follow-up questions through our teams. On behalf of myself, Randall Albright, Bill Anliker, representing Thermo Fisher Scientific Life Sciences, we appreciate your attendance in the Instrument Qualification for Quality Management System webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin, for that informative presentation. We've already received some great questions already. The first question we have is, what are the risks if I create or do the qualification myself?
Yeah, the risk of a customer-developed protocol may not be adequate to document performance. Being disconnected from the design process typically leaves the customer protocol skipping operational areas that would be captured by the manufacturer during the qualification. Hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you. How much time can I save by having the manufacturer of record perform the qualification versus using in-house resources?
Yeah, great question. I don't have statistics on this, but the length of time to develop a qualification protocol would be dependent on the complexity of the system. Having a manufacturer qualify allows quality systems to focus on the risk tolerance of the workflow, making the equipment qualification more plug and play to the validation process. So having the manufacturer perform the validation in the long run is a better idea.
Great. We do have another question here. It says, how often should I requalify an instrument?
Yeah, this is determined by the manufacturer's recommendation and the risk tolerance of the workflow. Thermo Fisher uses a risk-based determination to make recommendations to requalify. At a minimum, for the LSG instrumentation, we recommend after any move, any PM or planned maintenance, or after any of those critical repairs that I mentioned earlier that would affect data. So that would be the times that you would need to requalify the instrument.
And Justin, how long does it take Thermo Fisher Scientific to perform their qualification services?
Yeah, great question. It varies quite a bit. For the life sciences instruments, the LSG group, it depends on the model or platform, but typically between half a day to 2.5 days, depending on the platform. And then there's documentation processing that usually follows off-site, and then we will deliver the entire package in the qualification documents as well as supporting attachments at the end of the service.
Wow, thank you for that informative presentation, Justin. As a reminder to our audience, if you did submit a question, our Thermo Fisher team will directly follow up with you via the email address you provided at the time of registration. Thank you for joining us, and please check back frequently for new content and presentations added throughout the year. We'll see you soon.